Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm just saying hello in the YouTube chat. If you are watching live, we are monitoring the YouTube chat for questions, so feel free to ask anything. If it's off topic, we'll probably answer it towards the end of the show, but we are watching. So with that, we have a really cool show. We have new data that no one in our industry outside of, a couple people have seen yet. And so we're going to share it publicly. The one thing I really want everyone to do with this new data, is always is the case with brand new data that no one's ever seen before, take it with a big grain of salt. So I will say right off the bat that there are sampling issues in this data. And while things are very compelling and I tend to get excited and make lots of claims, just note that this is brand new data that has not been really tested or validated in any way, shape, or form. And so that's my disclaimer, which allows me to be excited and make crazy claims. So with that, we'll get into some boilerplate. So Carolyn, what's going on with the podcast?
Well, that news that Google is going to offer certification, I thought would be really fun.
Oh yeah, that would be a fantastic one. I commented on that article. I think it's a gutsy maneuver because it could very quickly turn into an anti-credential, especially when people with that credential have a hard time getting things to rank affordably. It could really blow up. But odds are it'll be too scarce to be meaningful. And I'm really more interested about what they're going to show in their training, because I would love to see a Google ranked website. That would be a very interesting thing to study.
Do you think they're actually going to show us a site that they ranked?
No. Typically, how this type of thing goes is they'll bring someone in who's kind of an insider, but not quite an insider. They'll be at an enterprise caliber. And so they'll be doing SEO for a website that generally can't lose. And they'll write some articles that rank. And then they'll say, look, I can rank pages without doing link building. You shouldn't link build either. But they'll never mention that SEO at the top of the PageRank ladder is very different than SEO at the bottom of the PageRank ladder. They'll just gloss over all of that and give you the advice as to what you should do if you already have a mountain of authority. So that's what I expect will happen. The examples to look for, if you get in that program, if you see that training, look for the small business real examples, not the advice that they give for small businesses, but the small businesses they've actually ranked. The examples they provide as proof are key, and that would be the discovery.
It might even lend itself to being a whole new series.
Yeah. So I'm all for them showing. I'm all for Google showing us pages they've ranked and telling us how they did it. I think that is a wonderful thing that should be strongly encouraged. What do you think, Lee?
I'm going to hold off on my judgment on that. But I would consider actually taking the training just to see what it is that they say works. It's fabulous not only for SEO Fight Club episodes, but it might provide some interesting test ideas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. The other thing is, if Google SEO advice was going to rank pages, it would have worked by now. And most SEOs who have been in the business any amount of time pretty much know that you prefer it when clients try Google's way and fail miserably first. Because that's just, a debate you don't need to constantly have all the time. And if Google's advice ranked pages, there would be no need to seek out SEOs in the first place. So if it was going to work, I hate to say it, it would have worked by now. So, if you've been doing Google advice for years and been getting mixed results, well, that's kind of what you get doing that. What do you think, Clint?
I agree. I would, if they do launch it, I'd probably actually take it because, like Lee said, one is testing, and two, it's a good foundation to understand, regardless of whether you believe their advice or not, to understand the advice that your clients or potential clients are getting, so that you can anticipate pushback or whatever. So yeah, I think I'd take it.
Maybe Clint and I can be lab partners. Who knows?
It sounds like a sales credential, and they're probably going to make you pay for it. But who knows? We'll see. And it might be a great sales credential. So I could imagine, a lot of scared businesses only wanting, Google approved things, whether they work or not.
Well, the Maps Rangers have managed to pull that off. So why not use it for the SEO too?
Yep. All right. And that brings us to SEO this week. Is it coming back?
Eventually. Still working though. Still plugging away.
All right. Well, we'll keep bugging you. Is there an estimated ETA on when you think it might be back?
I mean, I can give you a date, but it would be a complete lie.
Lie to us, Clint. All right, I won't bug you for that. All right, so Lee's course is starting this week, and my computer failing completely sabotaged his ability to promote it. But if you want a last chance effort to get in on his training, that door might still be open. But it's starting, tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow morning.
And so this course is really cool. It's very heavy on Quora SEO concepts. And so I find that, if you're an existing Quora SEO user and you've had success with Quora, that makes you a prime candidate to go to the next level. And that's what I kind of see Lee's training as, is taking Quora to the next level. I know Lee defines it very differently, but, we all see things from a different angle. So what do you think, Lee? Who are you looking to reach?
Intermediate to advanced SEOs, people that have generated results and are looking for better ways of basically upping their game a little bit. We do use Quora, but I find that if you have a tester's sort of mindset, you'll try things and see how they work and evaluate them for yourselves. You do just fine.
Yeah, and so if you're interested, it's testedseotraining.com. I make no money off of it. It's all Lee's course, but it's a great course. It's probably the best training I have seen in SEO. So I certainly am hard pressed to name something even close to it. And I recommend you go listen to the testimonial videos on his website. There's a lot of probably prominent SEOs you've seen in the various groups in there, and you can see what they have to say and the results they get. It's pretty unique in the results that people get. So strongly recommend checking it out if you're looking to get to that next level. All right, so this slide I'm showing here is the top WordPress themes according to the Built With website. And so over the years, we've all been familiar with the 20, 16, 20, 20, all those default WordPress themes. And many of them are still chart toppers. Then there's a number of other themes that have come and gone. And there was a test that I ran a while ago where I was trying to find a new way to test lots of things all at once. And so I made this really overcomplicated methodology, which I call keyword interlacing, to test things like the entire HTML specification all in one go. And I had some trouble with that test. I ended up repeating that test, probably 8 or 9 times. And the last 5 or 6 times was because of this weird behavior that kept happening. I kept finding that my tests, because they were interlaced all onto the same pages, the top end tests on the pages would actually work. And below a certain line in the source code, the tests wouldn't work anymore. And so what I did was I started taking tests that I had successfully completed from the top of the page, and I'd pull them out so that tests that were lower down could come back up to the top. And then lo and behold, every time I did that, every time I took the tests that work off the top and let lower tests come up, they would start working. And so we found this line in the source code, this cliff, where these tests would start and stop functioning depending upon whether or not you're above or below that line. That line became known as the keyword density cliff. All right, so what it means in terms of impact of SEO is that there appears to be this line in the source below which the benefits of keyword density don't appear to work. And so you have to get your keyword density in before that line. Otherwise, you lose that as a factor for advantage. Now, before you freak out, because everybody freaks out when this happens, you can still rank below the cliff. You can still get indexed below the cliff. It's just that quality of keyword stuffing has a limited area of effect on the page. And when we tested that, we only tested that in a simple indexing context. So in the raw source, not rendering the pages, we actually would have to repeat the test in a rendered context to find out if your pages are ultimately impacted by that. Because by the time Google does the rendering phase, that might not be a thing anymore. So we know that in the simple indexing phase, the keyword density cliff is real. We actually don't know if it's real in the secondary rendered phase of indexing. So it might not even be a thing at all once we get to that point of testing. But it's very real and very measurable in that simple indexing context. So that brought up a lot of discussions about the implications of it, and one of which came about with Honey Witcher's research. And Honey, why don't you tell us about the research that you did?
Well, it started out being a density test and to see how the WordPress themes affect your keyword density. So I picked some popular free WordPress themes. I didn't do any paid WordPress themes to test them, to kind of see what, just with the basic content or the exact same content on every page, what the density, what the size of the page was. And that's what this chart is that you see right in front of you, is what the size of the page was, and how big they got. And of course, the thought was that the bigger the size, the less that it would rank. But what I found is, like, Astra would rank number one in my tests all the time. But when I dug in to look at it, Astra sort of spoiled my test because they build in automatic navigation. And so there's a lot of like SEO stuff that goes on behind the scenes that messed up, my test.
So you may have lost the keyword density advantage because the size of their page is so big by default with inline scripts and inline styles that it pushes your content below the cliff. But you made up for it because they coded in other SEO factors like cross-linking and things of that nature.
That's correct. So, when I set them up for the density is sort of the same across all the pages, then Astra comes out ahead because it has SEO that the other pages don't have.
And the keyword density cliff that we were finding was at about 30 kilobytes. We can't get to an exact number because the size of any one test is kind of a margin of error. So it's plus or minus one SEO test and you can't really get any closer to an exact number than that. So it was in the ballpark of about 30 kilobytes with plus or minus 5 kilobytes.
Right. So I just want to add real quick that on the ranking numbers, that was like the number one most popular, number two most popular, number three most popular as of August 2021. Now this list has completely changed now, but that's what that rank, what those ranking numbers mean.
And so what these colors mean is how much headroom do you have to work with keyword density, and the brown ones you pretty much have little to nothing to work with.
That's right.
And the green ones, you have lots of room for your content to leverage keyword density.
That's correct.
One of the things that's interesting about this particular thing is if you look at 2019, it only has, 8,700 kilobytes, but then 2020, or 2021, there's, 10,000. And then you look at 2017 is 54,000 and change. Those default themes are not at all even close to the same weight year by year.
And let's see, we have Matt here. Maybe we can get him to talk about his experience, because I know he tested with changing the theme to go with a lighter theme. What results did you see out in the field?
It was effing good.
So you would recommend considering that as something to look at?
100%. You recommended a certain theme to use that was free, and we did really well on it. And it's actually kind of fun to show potential clients that we did pretty good on a free theme. It kind of looks like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the show, but it looks like S, but we try to dress it up as much as possible. So, but it worked out really good. It indexed amazingly quick. So, my knucklehead, thinking seems to be that Google definitely likes the lighter themes, easier to process, but we'll duplicate it a couple more times and let you guys know.
Yeah, so it's not something that we consider proven, but there's a growing body of evidence supporting the keyword density cliff. There's still a lot more testing we need to do. But at this time, when Honey did her research, I realized that I could modify the Cora shared data program to also collect WordPress theme names and their rank positions. And so Cora is anonymously finding where themes rank across a large body of keywords. And now we have all this shared data on themes. And so today, we're going to look at some of that shared data. This has been running for several months now. And so we're going to see what themes tend to do, what in this data. Now, a big problem with this data is that these tables, the Cora shared data, now the Cora shared themes, these are massive tables. Like, these are huge tables. They span, thousands upon thousands of different keywords, and they're very difficult to work with. So most of the data I'm showing is just a few days snapshot. It's not like a full analysis of all the data. That would have taken too much time and effort to get done by now. And I have to re-architect things, redo the database indexes and rewrite the queries using temp tables and do all these performance optimization things to get the reports that we really want in a timely manner. And that work hasn't happened yet. So we're looking at very small samples of data, and that's very problematic. And that's why you need to take all this with a grain of salt, even though I'm going to make a lot of claims and do all that stuff. I'm going to do everything that pisses off Clint. I'm just going to disclaimer it up front because I also want to be excited about it. This is a new thing and a new capability. But when Clint, if and when Clint complains about what I'm doing later, Clint is right. So I'll just say that up front. Is that agreeable, Clint?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, there is a ton of data, and I can't even show it to you all at once because it would go on forever and ever and would have to be the tiniest font ever. So all I'm doing here is I'm looking at the themes that had 1,000 or more distinct keywords in the database. So I've segmented the data, and we're looking at about a week's worth of data in this. And so these are the number of searches, a number of distinct keywords that are in the sample we're looking at. So these things are characterizing the sample size. There's vastly more data if I expand it to look at more days of data. And so this column, this best one, I'm just looking at what's the best ranking that the theme had. So all of these had occasions where they ranked #1 in Google. And as the sample size, as we look at smaller and smaller sample size themes that didn't occur as much in the data, you'll see that their best ranking starts to waver. And that is probably an artifact of sample size. So I would imagine that just about all themes could be #1 with enough SEO and enough websites that are trying that theme and SEOing it. So sample size definitely comes into play. Now, this average is the average ranking that the theme had in the data across these keywords. And so we can see where these themes tend to rank, and they tend to slot into different positions. And as we look at more of this data, you will see that some themes seem to have a noticeably easier time.
Okay, so Ted, let me ask you a question. The distinction between searches and keywords, is that the searches being the number of URLs on the particular report, or is it the report running more than once?
A particular keyword might be like Chicago SEO.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago SEO might have been searched multiple times in this sample.
Okay.
So we have the total number of searches and the distinct number of keywords that it boiled down to. Now, the rankings of, Avada themes for Chicago SEO could have changed during the sample time. We know that there's volatility, so they could have ranked at different places as well. But yeah, there is a notion in this data of total searches and distinct keywords. And so that kind of characterizes what kind of sample size we're working with.
So on average, we would expect over a large number of searches, any particular theme to have a rank of about 50 on average, somewhere towards the middle.
Yeah, because we're only looking at the top 100 results. So the average should slot in at 50. If theme was never a factor ever, then everyone should average at 50. So I then moved to the next smaller bucket, which are the themes that had 500 to 999 distinct keywords. And, we obviously got a different group of themes. And if we go back, so this group typically ranged from 44 to 53. This one ranged from 43 to 51. So it shifted a little, but that could just be in the data. And then from 250 to 499, notice this one. It's now got an average rank position of 16. This one has 29 and change, so about 30. So we're starting to see some of these things. And what's really interesting to me is this 2016 one. So this one shows up a number of times, and I find it fascinating that an old default theme performs so well, even better than current default themes. And we see that the range expanded, like, some of these are doing terrible, but, our sample size is getting worse, and we're starting to see the best ranked positions starting to waver, which could be an artifact of that poor sample size. But knowing that an average rank of 16 is possible with SEO, I mean, that's an interesting discovery. So now I'm kind of interested as to what is in this theme and what is not in this theme, and what people are doing to get this kind of result. So that is starting to be worth some investigation right there. So this is in the sample bucket for 150 to 250 distinct keywords. A lot more wavering in the best rankings. Looks like it's ranging from 29 to 57 for this group. These child ones we'll see again later. This is what happens when you customize a theme, but you do it in a way that you want to be able to upgrade the theme later. it creates these child variants. So these are modified themes whenever you see the child. And then you can see these lists keep getting longer and longer and harder to put on the page. So as the sample size goes down, we get more and more themes that are in that bucket. So it's harder and harder to show them all. Here's one that had an average rank of 13. This POS Vanessa 6. So it sounds like a merchant theme of some sort. So again, not a lot of keywords, but an impressive average rank. And there's a 16 with Penguin US. Thrive Agency looks like it tends to do pretty well. Now, these average rankings probably aren't just due to the theme choice. There's probably SEOs behind these. And probably what we're seeing is the effect of the SEO. But it's really interesting to note which themes kind of lend themselves to SEO. And so here's the 75 to 99 bucket, average ranking of 20. Some are abysmal, average rank of 69. But again, that might come down to the SEO. And so at this point, at looking at the data, I started wondering things like, I wonder if I could segment these into types of themes, or if I could actually join this data, the shared theme data, across to the shared factor data and do things. So at this point in the process, I just started thinking about those notions. So the 50 to 75, so I had to continue the list on 2. So there's a lot more themes once the sample size gets that small. Some, though, are interesting. This Monochrome Pro, that one I have earmarked to go research. Because, again, it's probably the SEO being used on the page, but it looks like this theme lends itself well to aggressive SEO. So I'm interested into what it's doing and not doing. And then at this one, there was actually 455 entries on the list in the 25 to 50 distinct keywords. I couldn't show them all, so I just showed the top 30. The list was too big. But again, there's some themes here that are doing amazingly well, but extremely small sample size. So this is like one website in the data that's probably very aggressively SEO'd, and they're knocking it out of the park. So it might not be the theme that's doing this, it's the SEO. But, again, knowing that these themes can accomplish that type of average is fantastic. That's kind of what we're looking for is, what are the themes that won't shoot us in the foot? And the list got even longer. So between 10 and 25 distinct keywords, there was almost 1,800 themes in that list. So no way in hell I could show you that whole list. So these are the best of those 1,800 and the very low sample size. And a lot of those, they do very well. And I'm sure up in the popular themes that if we found the right teeny tiny sample, we could find them, examples of them doing that well. So again, keep in mind there's sampling. We're not saying that, these are way better than the popular themes all the time. It's not what we're saying at all, but it's cool to see this happening, to know that this theme plus SEO can get this result. Just knowing that's possible is something interesting to me. Matt says Neil Patel has a theme. That's the way to go. Well, I think that Neil Patel theme, we'll look at that in a bit, is a perfect example of the effect of SEO on the outcome. And so, yeah, I bet people would have varying results using that theme, but it shows that, with aggressive SEO that, some themes can do really well.
Or change your default theme name in your files to your name and rank 30 easy ass keywords and then run a Quora report on it, and that'll make you famous.
Yeah. That'll work too. So I decided to look at the default themes, and the best entry is a 2011 modified theme. So it makes me wonder about what modifications they made. And then 2016 unmodified is number 2, which I find fascinating. So the best performing unmodified default theme is the 2016 theme. And just the occurrence of modified themes in the list is a neat thing, because it kind of shows us that people are customizing these and getting results, but the older ones tend to look better in that data. So I decided to look at all the modified themes and find out which ones perform best in a modified sense. And so SmartMag and Astra X and Generate Press. And, this kind of makes sense because these are kind of popular with SEOs. So they're doing a lot of SEO against these. So I'm not surprised by seeing these as top performing modified. I am surprised that the average doesn't tend to be better than that. But I'm not surprised these are atop the list. So I started to look at pro themes. Everybody's selling a pro theme. So I wanted to see if, those pro themes, stood out different from, other themes. Did they have advantages because you're paying for the pro version of something? And in general, they didn't do that great. The Monochrome Pro one that I mentioned from before, it topped the list of all the pro ones. So again, I want to go back and look at this one and see what they're doing, because that's an interesting result. Odds are the SEO on those pages is probably the thing that makes the difference. But it's worth a look. It's worth noting that, your SEO plus this theme can get a better than average result out of all the pro themes. Like that to me is useful information. So
you're going to back up just a sec, Ted. So you're not going to buy pro themes for the SEO value, although there may be some, stylized or conversion value to those themes.
Yeah. There might be reasons you want them because they convert better or they have an aesthetic that you prefer. But the reason you probably don't buy them is because they'll rank you to the top in Google. So this data does not support that pro themes rank you to the top on their own. So I was looking at themes that were specifically for news or magazines. And so these were the chart toppers for news. These were the chart toppers for magazines. And the only one I feel is interesting is that SmartMag, did well, it did okay out of the box, but did much better in a modified context. So apparently there's a way to customize that works better than the average. And so that's a decent jump in average. And knowing that somebody was able to do that with some modifications to the theme, I do consider that useful info. So themes based on what percentage of their rankings were page one. So I modified my queries at this point because I wanted to know, when I look at the themes, what percentage of the pages were in a desirable spot. And so I looked at the most popular themes first. So way back from the beginning, when I showed you those 1,000+ keyword ones, that's what we're looking at here again. But this time we have what percentage of page one was the sample data. And so some of them, I find, 12%, 11%, 10%, 9%, those are decent ratios. But when we look across all themes, seeing things like 68% page one is pretty impressive, knowing that's possible. Again, I don't think that the theme by itself is doing this result. It's obviously a combination with that SEO, but knowing that good SEO plus this theme can get that result, that's pretty cool. That's something I want to investigate more. Thrive Agency was a standout in this one, and it makes sense that an agency theme would be aggressively SEO'd. That Neil Patel one is here, so there's the impact of SEO on a custom theme. So it's interesting to see that this type of result is possible. Getting 68% of your keywords on page one, that's a really cool capability. So I did try to join the data across with the shared data. And so the cool thing about this is I can actually look up any of Cora's factors for these themes at the time they were checked. So I can find, any factor amount. I can look at off page in terms of themes. I can look at keyword stuffing and its effect on themes. I can look at combinations of factors. But these tables are so huge that doing the table joins just, in a simple, basic way, like I did for this analysis, I had to reduce it from days of data down to a few hours of data in order to get those table joins to complete in a reasonable amount of time. But what I did was I demonstrated it was possible. So I'm looking at keywords in the HTML tag. I believe that's CP 470 or in that vicinity, and the Cora factors. And I'm looking at the average measurement by theme. And I filtered the list down to the ones that were 50 or less. So these are the themes that had the least on page at all for their records. And how did they do with no on page? So what's the best theme to use if you're not going to do any SEO? And it looks like Divi came in number one by a lot. So if you're not gonna SEO your page, then Divi might be the leader based on this teeny tiny sample of data. So I thought it was interesting that it did noticeably better than the next runners up. But again, the second you want to SEO your page, these aren't the picks. These are the best ones if you're going to do absolutely no on page.
Yeah, one of the things when I saw this particular table, the Astra one didn't surprise me because of the work that Honey had done a while back. And, there was just so many things that Astra did to overcome its size deficiency in there. Do you remember all the stuff that it was doing, Honey, or is that like you would have to go back and look and see?
The main thing that I remember about that is that it puts all the pages, it creates its own navigation page. And so it indexes all the pages, whether you want them indexed or not, which is kind of a downside if you have some pages that you don't want indexed. It just automatically does it for you. And it's like, that is some shit. Because sometimes you have pages that you don't want out there yet. And even if you had it marked no index, because it puts it into, because it creates its own navigation, almost like its own indexing type page, it throws it all out there, even when you don't want it to be.
Do you happen to remember if this is one of the themes that also throws some schema in there by default?
I don't remember if it's this
Yeah.
one or not. I mean, that's almost a year ago. So
Yeah, and the WordPress plugins that you install can obviously sway, these results and things of that nature. One of the comments in YouTube is that this seems like a waste of time, and that could very well be true. But in SEO testing, we tend to get really excited by very stupid tests. And very stupid tests have led to very big discoveries. Some examples of stupid things that are ridiculous to even try. We put 1 million keywords on a single page to see how many of them we could index. We put 1 million keywords in the HTML title to see where the limits are and where those could index. We changed the keyword that a page was tuned for once per second to see how Google would handle it and what would ultimately rank. And, some of the biggest discoveries I think there have been in SEO have been testing absolutely ridiculous, stupid things. So I don't feel any shame or anything bad by doing something that most of SEO would deem a waste of time, because you have to be out there in tinfoil hat land to learn something new. You can't just stay in your echo chamber and discover things.
And at a minimum,
Ted,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I think that my biggest takeaway from this, just because the reason why I was testing it in the first place really had to do with testing methods in general. And that is when people are going out and doing tests and then they're publishing those tests and saying, hey, this is what I discovered. I'm usually asking, what theme did you use? Did you use just HTML? Did you use a WordPress theme? Because I know that WordPress themes affect results.
Yep.
And so then you don't have a clean test. And so they might be throwing out information out there saying, hey, this one technique really works really well. And it's not the technique at all. It's the WordPress theme that they used. It's how they set up their test. So for me, that was the big important takeaway on this, is that when people are putting out tests, I wanted to be able to ask them questions about how they set up their test to make sure that it was a good, clean test and the information that they're putting out there is actually accurate.
Yep.
And beyond testing, there's you got to put this in the practical sense. So if you're saying, oh, this is a waste of time, I've already beat you, because you're not paying attention to what Ted is saying. Ted is ultimately saying, after all this mumbo jumbo and nerd speak, that the theme that you choose has an impact on your SEO, and you need to be cognizant of that. And then Ted said it, Honey proved it, and you discounted it. That's what happened in that whole conversation. So I would go back and listen to the recording again, listen to what the both of them are saying, and then apply that to your theme selection when you're going down the road. If you're picking Divi, you're an idiot. If you're picking Avada, okay, there's a bunch of fanboys over there. Or if you don't even want to use a theme at all, learn how to code or use Oxygen. But this is helping you make that decision in a smarter, more data-based way. That's what this is all about, in my opinion.
Yeah. And to me, the exciting part is it's a new capability, new type of analysis that has never been seen before in SEO. I've never seen this kind of data from anyone, anywhere. And so that's really cool to me, that we can look at how themes do, and we can start to segment it on specific aspects, types of tactics, types of qualities of what's happening on a page. So we could, potentially figure out, hey, let's look at keyword stuffing and let's find the themes that best lend themselves to keyword stuffing. Or let's look at H3 tags, keyword usage and H3 tags, and figure out which themes best leverage H3 tags. So there's a lot of room for discovery. The main problem we have is that the data tables are absolutely massive, and so we have to think about problems of scale to answer those types of questions.
But it does, even the limited data right here lends enough nuggets that you can go and point and say, hey, these are some things that you may want to look at testing to potentially improve your performance. And if you've got one of these themes that the average rank is 68 or something along those lines, you might want to consider swapping themes and getting away from something that may be hindering your ranking. So
yeah, and again, this slide that's on the screen, these are the best ones. If you do absolutely no SEO, these were the ones that did the best. And so I do not recommend doing absolutely no SEO. I think that's a terrible mistake. But yeah, it's interesting to see that, like these ones with no SEO. The other way of looking at this list is these are the themes most likely to spoil your SEO test, because they have effects outside of doing no SEO. So that's interesting to know. I would not want you to use Divi for an SEO test, or Astra, as Honey pointed out. So Lee, how do you feel? Do you feel dirty that we went out on the edge on this one?
no, I mean, I always love the exploration stuff, because again, it's another way of looking at data and saying, here are some potential issues. Maybe the data points you in that. Maybe it's the sampling that could make something look a little better, a little worse. But at least it's the things that I'd want to try. And I know for next week's show, we're talking about a recent competition. And I know that when we jumped into that competition, one of the considerations that we had was which WordPress theme we were going to use, given that we had to move quickly and we didn't have time to fully SEO everything the way that we normally would. So, there's real world advantage in this data if people will apply it.
Yeah, and again, we're just scratching the surface. Like this, this is a first look at new data and new kinds of analysis that I have never seen before in our industry. I don't know of anyone who's compiled data like this. If you do, let me know in the YouTube comments. I'd love to look at it and to compare what I'm seeing with what they've seen in the past. But I've been in this industry a long, long time, and I've never seen anything like it. With
It
that,
also changes. I mean, that was one of the comments, I think, Honey, you were talking about on this was how much the top themes had changed from when you looked at them.
Right. I think there was only 4 that were still listed as some of the top popular themes compared to what they are now.
Yeah, so as the themes change, as new stuff comes out, there's risk and reward in the potential SEO advantage or disadvantage, brought out by the new themes that the makers put on the market, free and paid.
What was real popular back then, it was all about, site speed. And so it's like, what are the fastest themes? And so that's what was real popular at the time, because everybody thought, oh, I have to have this super fast page speed in order to rank. And so that was sort of the driving force during that time.
yeah, absolutely. And Terry Powers commenting, glad to see your system held up for the entire Fight Club. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, everyone. My computer died at the beginning of last week's show. So it was there for the first couple minutes, and then it died hard and did not come back up. So I have a new system, and I recovered everything. I didn't lose anything, just a lot of time and dignity. So my apologies if you were left wondering what the hell happened. That's what happened. And that computer served me very well. It was the computer I started my business on. Is approaching 6 years old. It had had a lot of abuse over those 6 years. So it served me well. I'm not surprised it gave out. But yeah, it's just inopportune timing.
Is there ever a good time for hard drive failure?
No, there's never a good time, and it's never a good look. You never look cool doing it. But that's the nature of that beast. But I want to thank everyone. Even the seems like a waste of time comment, I feel is a valid opinion on this. So take it all with a grain of salt. And we all quite possibly have learned absolutely nothing from it, but I'm still gonna dig and look at new data, because that's what I do. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.